Hey everyone! Today, we're unraveling the interesting story of the Lombards, a Germanic tribe with roots in Scandinavia. Their journey is part of what historians call the Wandering of the Nations, a massive wave of migrations that shaped Europe between the late 4th and 6th centuries. But, as scholars suggest, these movements likely began earlier and lasted longer than traditionally thought. The Lombards first appeared in historical records as early as 9 CE, mentioned by the Roman historian Velleius Paterculus. They pop up again in the writings of Strabo around 20 CE and Tacitus in 98 CE. However, the most detailed early account of their origins comes from Paul the Deacon, a Lombard historian writing in the late 8th century. His book, The History of the Lombards, draws on earlier works like The Origin of the Lombards, but not all of his sources are reliable. Some of his tales are outright bizarre, yet historians have pieced together valuable insights from his accounts. According to Paul, the Lombards were originally called the Winili, a Scandinavian tribe led by brothers Eibor and Eo, along with their mother Gambara. Facing pressure from the Vandals, who demanded tribute or war, the Winili chose to fight for their freedom, despite being vastly outnumbered. Both tribes sought divine favor from their gods, Odin and Freya. Legend has it that Freya advised Gambara to have the Winili women let down their hair and arrange it to look like beards. When Odin saw them at sunrise, he remarked, "Who are these long beards?" Freya seized the moment, declaring that since Odin had named them, he should grant them victory. And he did. This quirky tale gave the tribe their name, Lombards, or Longbeards. Despite their triumph over the Vandals, the Lombards struggled with scarcity in the region and decided to move southward. Along the way, they endured battles and hardships, eventually settling near the Elbe River in a land called Skoringa. Here, they were briefly subdued by the Saxons before regaining their independence under King Alboin, the son of Eo. Agelmund's reign is marked by a curious story of a prostitute who bore 7 children and abandoned them in a fish pond. One surviving child, discovered by Agelmund, grew up to be Lemesio, a formidable warrior who became king after Agelmund's death in a Bulgarian raid. Lemesio avenged Agelmund, defeating the Bulgarians and rescuing the Lombard princess. Under subsequent kings like Letu, Hildioch, and Gudioch, the Lombards continued their migration, driven by overpopulation, resource shortages, or conflicts with groups like the Huns. Around 487 CE, they moved toward the Danube region. Here they came into contact with the Eastern Roman Empire, which invited them to Pannonia, now modern-day Hungary, to help defend against the Gepids. By 526 CE, the Lombards had established a stable presence in the region under their first historically verified king, Wacho, after defeating the Herulds and taking over their lands. And under King Wacho and later his successor, Alboin, who reigned from 546 to 560 CE, the Lombards flourished in Pannonia. When Alboin passed away, his son Alboin took the throne, and his reign from 560 to 572 CE marked a turning point in their history. Alboin is often remembered as one of the most significant Lombard kings. According to some accounts, he forged an alliance with King Bayan I of the Avars, and together they defeated the Gepids in 567 CE. This battle resulted in the death of the Gepid king Cunimund, whose skull Alboin supposedly turned into a macabre drinking cup to commemorate his victory. However, other sources suggest that it might have been Bayan I who killed Cunimund, and later presented the skull to Alboin as a gesture of triumph. Despite their success, the alliance came at a cost. Alboin had agreed that all the land and wealth of the Gepids would go to the Avars if they won, leaving the Lombards with little gain. Why he consented to such terms remains a mystery, but it shifted the balance of power in the region. The Avars quickly grew stronger than the Gepids ever had, and by the mid-6th century, the Lombards found themselves overshadowed. As the Avars consolidated their control, Alboin sought to strengthen his position by marrying Rosamund, the daughter of Cunimund. The union was meant to unite the Lombards and the remnants of the Gepids against the rising power of the Avars. However, this alliance proved ineffective, as the Avars were now too dominant, and the Gepids too weakened to pose a threat. Meanwhile, Lombard soldiers had been serving in Italy under the Byzantine general Narses. These troops had fought valiantly at the Battle of Tagenate in 552 CE, where they helped Narses defeat the Ostrogothic king Totila. Their experiences in Italy left them with vivid memories of its lush, fertile lands, and some accounts suggest they proposed the idea of migration to Alboin. Others claim it was Narses himself who invited the Lombards to settle in Italy, though this theory is often disputed. Whatever the case, in 568 CE, Alboin led his people out of Pannonia and into northern Italy. The migration faced little resistance. Many areas were nearly deserted, allowing Alboin to capture city after city with ease. One notable exception was Pavia, which held out for 3 years before falling to a Lombard siege. By 572 CE, Alboin had established control over most of Italy, making Verona his capital until Pavia was secured. To manage the vast territory, he divided it into 36 duchies, each governed by a duke who reported directly to him. While this system allowed for efficient administration, it also gave the dukes considerable autonomy, creating disparities in governance and fostering regional rivalries. Alboin, preoccupied with securing the kingdom's borders against external threats like the Franks and the Byzantine Empire, left much of the internal administration to the dukes. This lack of centralized control weakened the cohesion of the kingdom. The situation worsened in 572 CE, when Alboin was assassinated in a conspiracy led by his wife Rosamund. According to Paul the Deacon, Rosamund's motive was revenge for her father's death. One infamous story recounts Alboin forcing her to drink from the cup made from Cunimund's skull, an insult that reportedly drove her to plot his murder. She enlisted Alboin's foster brother, Helmechus, to carry out the assassination. After Alboin's death, the Lombard territories descended into disarray. Without strong central leadership, the duchies became even more fragmented, often clashing with one another. This internal strife left the kingdom vulnerable to external forces, particularly the Franks and the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines, who had spent vast resources reclaiming Italy from the Ostrogoths, were dismayed to see their former allies now occupying the land. In response, Emperor Maurice established the Exarchate at Ravenna around 582 CE. This military command aimed to organize resistance against the Lombards and reclaim Italy for the empire. However, the local populace, burdened by imperial taxes and weary of constant warfare, had little interest in returning to Byzantine rule. The Exarchate's efforts ultimately proved ineffective, and the Lombards maintained their hold on Italy. And the Lombards realized they needed to work together to face outside threats. To unite their people, they chose a king, Rothari, in 586 CE. As king, Rothari led the Lombards in battles against the Byzantine forces, winning important victories, though they didn't come easily. To strengthen his position, Rothari planned to marry the daughter of Childebert II, a Frankish king, but the plan fell apart. Instead, Childebert's daughter married a Visigoth king, creating an alliance between the Franks and the Byzantine Empire. This new alliance led to a major invasion of Italy in 590 CE, with the Franks capturing several key cities. In response, Rothari married Theodelinda, the daughter of a Bavarian duke, hoping to secure another strong ally. Sadly, Rothari died soon after in 590 CE. His successor, Agilulf, who also married Theodelinda, turned out to be a skilled leader. Agilulf made peace with the Franks, strengthened the kingdom's borders, and restructured the government to give less power to the local Lombard dukes, making the kingdom more unified. During this time, the Byzantine Empire was busy fighting the Avars and Slavs in the Balkans and the Persians in Anatolia. With little energy left to fight in Italy, the Byzantines were unable to challenge Agilulf's rule. This allowed Agilulf to focus on improving life within the kingdom. Even though the Lombards were mostly Arian Christians and the majority of Italians were Catholic, there wasn't much conflict between the groups. Agilulf's decision to baptize his sons as Catholics, encouraged by Theodelinda, helped ease tensions. Over time, the Lombards began to adopt Roman customs, clothing, and even names for their children, blending more into Italian culture. After Agilulf died, Theodelinda ruled until their son Adalald was old enough to take the throne. However, Adalald's support for Catholicism upset many Arian nobles, and he was eventually overthrown by his brother-in-law, Aurewald, who restored Arian leadership. Aurewald's reign was followed by Rothari in 636 CE, a king who expanded the Lombard Kingdom to its largest size. By then, the Byzantines controlled only Rome and a few small areas. Rothari is also remembered for writing down Lombard laws in Latin with the Edict of Rothari in 643 CE, an important milestone in their history. Unfortunately, Rothari's son, Rodewald, didn't rule for long. He was assassinated by his rivals soon after becoming king. The kingdom then fell into chaos, with different leaders fighting for control in places like Milan and Pavia. This division lasted until Liutprand became king in 712 CE. Liutprand's reign was a time of growth and success for the Lombards. He expanded their territory, built strong alliances with the Franks, and brought stability and prosperity to the kingdom. However, after his death in 744 CE, things took a turn for the worse. The kings who followed Liutprand weren't as capable, and the kingdom began to weaken. The last Lombard king, Desiderius, tried to turn things around. He managed to capture Rome and push out the Byzantines from Italy, but his actions upset Pope Hadrian I. This led Charlemagne, the powerful Frankish king, to step in. Charlemagne's army defeated Desiderius in 774 CE, ending Lombard rule in Italy. Although some Lombard dukes kept control over small areas, the kingdom was absorbed into Charlemagne's empire, and the Lombard culture slowly blended into the Frankish world.